From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. It was committee day in the legislature as several policy panels met to consider legislation, as time is becoming of the essence for lawmakers seeking to get bills through the process. We'll start tonight's coverage in the Senate Judiciary Committee, which took up controversial legislation pertaining to police body cam footage and its public release. Senate Bill 14 from Senator Marika Coleman would make police body cam recordings public record and allow for their release after 30 days. Coleman said the idea is to be transparent with police interactions, especially in the instance of police-involved shootings. The legislature last year passed a law allowing family members to privately view police body cam footage but not release it publicly. Several committee members from both sides of the aisle had problems with the bill, including Coleman's Democratic colleague, Senator Roger Smitherman.
The sooner that we get that out, you kind of can squelch some of those rumors. Because sometimes, prior to people, the unrest happens because of the rumors, what really happened. And if we can get that body cam video out as soon as possible, then we can identify bad apples. And if the police have operated within procedure, we can identify that as well.
If a video is made public after a 30-day period or made public, then I think a lot of times you hamper an investigation, you hamper the defense, as so eloquently stated by both the lawyers that have spoken so far. You also victimize again and again and again those people who have been the victims of that crime that's been perpetrated against them.
The person charged has just as much right as justice and reasonable just as the person who's the victim too, because that may not even be the person. And so I do see problems with that. I don't see problems with the family saying it wherever they want to. It can be the next day. But to release it out into the world, no. I think there's no way that you're going to have an equitable trial.
If there's a dispute between law enforcement saying, hey, this is going to compromise our investigation, we just go to the circuit judge and let them decide. So we've got an independent arbiter of, well, it may hurt the defense or it may hurt the prosecution.
That bill was ultimately voted down in a 4-8 vote. On to the House Judiciary Committee, which took up legislation aimed at allowing elderly or disabled inmates more parole options. The Alabama Board of Pardons and Paroles in recent years has drastically curtailed parole, rarely granting release for those who are eligible under the law. House Bill 299 from Representative Chris England would create a special path for parole review for inmates who are either seriously ill or over 67 years old. Only nonviolent offenders would be eligible, and they'd have had to serve at least 10 years of their sentence. If denied parole, they could be eligible again in 5 years.
It is the compassionate parole bill that just requires the parole board in consideration of those who are in have serious health issues and of advanced age to have some sort of weighted consideration given to those factors. And like I said, I think Representative Wadsworth has an amendment from the Civil Subcommittee that I won't necessarily say it's friendly, but I'll say it's a compromise, and I appreciate their work on it.
If you've served 10 years, and what this does, it makes it you have to serve 15 years. And also you have to be age 67 or more. And those are throughout the bill. But there's also one other provision. It deals with the term sex offense. It excluded the sex offense under Section 15-2A-5. We left that in, however, we enlarged it so it's first and second degree. So it covers all the sex offenses that are involved. But essentially, we've made it where 67 is instead of the term geriatric age, we put it 67, and they have to serve at least 15 years of their time before they'd be considered.
That bill was approved by the committee and now goes to the full House. England wasn't successful with another bill, his House Bill 27, which would allow for resentencing for anyone sentenced to death by a jury verdict that wasn't unanimous. That bill appears dead for the session. The House Homeland Security Committee today considered legislation aimed at allowing schools more options for hiring resource and security officers. Senate Bill 7 from Senator Chris Elliott would allow non-public schools to contract with sheriffs or police departments to provide resource or security services. It's being carried in the House by Representative Russell Bedsole.
This bill deals with the ability of allows for a mechanism so that a private school can contract with their local law enforcement to provide school resource officers. The concerns that we had before us a few weeks ago in committee was relative to some liability type issues to ensure that our sheriff's offices and our police departments were offering their services to the public schools in the area as a priority, and then gives them the ability to do these contracts sort of as an aside. So specifically the amendment we worked on with the Association of County Commissions to address those liability issues to ensure that the services of school resource officers are being offered in that area, and if those requirements are made, then it would allow that sheriff's office or police department to be able to contract with that private school. So the amendment just adds in that language after a couple weeks of work to ensure that we are covering the public schools also in addition before these contracts occur.
That bill was approved and now goes to the full House. The Senate Education Policy Committee took up legislation meant to encourage fairness and safety in high school athletics. It would bar schools from being a part of athletic associations if they engage in unfair coercion or fail to follow proper concussion safety protocols.
This bill, in essence, is what I refer to as an interplay bill. Currently, we have independent schools who are not able to play Alabama High School Athletic Association schools that are right down the road, while in fact those Alabama High School Athletic Association same schools can travel to Mississippi, to Florida, to Georgia, or to Tennessee to play other schools. This is truly a bill to help the children. And it is amazing to me that that there would be any pushback, because it is an opportunity, again, not a mandate, but rather an opportunity for those children to play other children, K through 12, junior high and high school kids that are most likely in the same community that they go to church with, and give them an opportunity to engage in athletic competitions.
We have no business going in there telling these folks that they gotta do this or do that when they are not a state agency. We don't have them in the budget. We don't do anything like that. So we shouldn't be meddling with that organization. Leave them alone. Leave them alone. They don't do nothing. We can't micromanage other people's business just because we have the power and authority to do something.
That bill was approved and now goes to the full Senate. Here are some other notable bills advancing through committee today. House Bill 330 from Representative Matt Woods would require public and private colleges to report any funding they receive from foreign countries of concern. It now goes to the Senate floor. House Bill 415 from Representative Wandalyn Gavan would repeal the Distressed Institutions of Higher Learning Loan Fund that was set up for Birmingham Southern College, which of course has announced it is closing. That bill goes to the full House. House Bill 310 from Representative Terry Collins would establish the Rural Hospital Investment Program with tax credits for donations to help save rural hospitals. It goes to the full House. And House Bill 448 from Representative Anthony Daniels would revise the qualification dates for this November's election, clearing up the issue of President Joe Biden possibly not appearing on the ballot due to the Democratic National Convention not meeting until after the current deadline. That bill now goes to the full House. A special event in the capital city today honoring Alabama's hardworking utility workers. The annual event is sponsored by the Energy Institute of Alabama. It's a chance for state leaders to pay tribute to those who, when severe weather strikes, ventured into hazardous conditions to restore power. The Energy Institute annually presents the Outstanding Service Award to linemen who exceed expectations. This year, the award recipients are Stephen Keel, Britt Clayton, Daniel Hollis, Nick Porter, Larry Littlejohn, and Travis Hardy.
Every time there's a storm, you see the damage to people's lives, but then you get to turn around and see how you repair everything and bring everything back together. So thank you for what you do. I will tell you, and I think I tell you this every year, when I get those phone calls and I know that you're out in harm's way, climbing the poles, in the bucket trucks, going through all sorts of terrible terrain, the first thing I tell the people that call me is, make sure your linemen know that I'm praying for them.
And this is one of my favorite days of the year. You are one of my favorite groups that I represent here in the state, and I know that I speak for the whole state of Alabama when I say thank you for all that you do. You are appreciated, and we are here today to honor you, and not only do we honor you this day, but every day throughout the year.
When your power goes out, you can't just click a button and fix it. When your power goes out, one of our linemen and one electric utility all across the state leaves his or her family, gets in a truck, drives to a location, and typically climbs a pole to do a really dangerous job to get your lights back on.
The only thing I can really say about line work is what it means to me is it's extremely rewarding. Going on storms, even at home, like cutting people's power back on, it's extremely rewarding to me.
When we come back, I'll be joined by State Representative Cynthia Almond to discuss her workforce development housing legislation and other bills. Stay with us.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Representative Cynthia Almond from Tuscaloosa. Representative, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Todd.
Well, I wanted to have you on because you've got a bevy of bills. I could put it that way. Lots of different legislation you're carrying in kind of different policy areas. I wanted to start with one that's going to be on the House floor tomorrow, and that is having to do with housing in the workforce development arena. We've heard about barriers to the workforce and trying to get more people off the sidelines and into jobs and into the workforce. And housing has been named as a barrier to the workforce. So you have a bill addressing this. Walk through what it does.
Sure, thank you. Well, first of all, this was a bill that was brought to me last year, really by members of the business community. And we did file it last year just to sort of introduce the concept, and really began working in earnest on it this year. And as it happened, the governor and the lieutenant governor came out with this workforce package of bills, and this fit beautifully within that whole package, so it's really worked out well for that. But basically what it does, it incentivizes, first this was a Reagan-era program that was begun under President Reagan, and it's a federal housing tax credit. There's two different kinds of federal housing tax credits, and there's what they call a 9% tax credit, which we use every day here in the state of Alabama. The dollars allocated to our state get used up every year. There's a 4% tax credit where we often leave money on the table. It goes unused in our state, primarily because the math doesn't work for the developers to be able to use it. And this is basically workforce housing, and that is housing where people live. It's subsidized housing, rent-capped housing, if you will, but you have to have a job to live there, and you do pay rent. You just don't pay market rate rent. And there is a federal program that gives money to help incentivize developers to build this kind of housing. In our state, our rents are so low, the math doesn't work. Surrounding southern states have enacted this tax credit, as have other states, for the same reasons. They've already done this, and we just haven't. So this is hopefully something that will pass, and we'll be able to do this in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I heard it talked about in this way that, okay, we all know about Section 8 housing, low income housing, and if you're in that situation, if you're participating in Section 8 housing, if you get a job, you might not be qualified for Section 8 housing anymore, right? So that's a disincentive to actually one of these barriers to the workforce. Is that kind of part of the equation here?
Exactly. As you know, we've been looking at our low workforce participation rate, meaning we have, in our estimation, at least too many able-bodied people who are not working, and that hurts our economy. So we are trying to incentivize people to go to work, or at least remove disincentives. Mm-hmm. And so this is one of the reasons why the bill works so well for this workforce package. It incentivizes people to go to work. So yes, if a mother of 3 children is living in Section 8 housing, decides she's ready to go back to work, gets a job, she's likely to lose her housing because she makes too much money. Likewise, though, or at the same time, she can't really afford to go buy her own house at this point.
Right.
This type of housing is a great segue for somebody like her to incentivize her to go back to work and yet have a quality place to live with her children that she can afford. That's one example. Another example might be in areas of high growth, such as Huntsville and Mobile, who are trying to attract people to their area from other areas of the state, or
they
even
have
outside
the jobs,
the state.
right?
They have the jobs, and they're trying to bring people to their area. There simply is not enough affordable housing for some of these workers to come and stay, and incentivize them to pick up and move. And so that this is the type of housing that would do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you wrote about how folks down in like Baldwin County were staying in condos because there just wasn't enough.
Yes, some of the hotels down there are having to set aside space in their own hotels to house their workers,
wow.
For example.
Another bill that's gotten a lot of fanfare, and that is the Alabama, let me get this right, Alabama Healthcare Sciences High School.
That's pretty much it.
School of Healthcare Sciences.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
I'm sorry. But this is, we've reported on it several times about, we have a math and science school in Mobile. We have a School of Fine Arts in Birmingham, the technology school up there in Decatur. So kind of like that, these high schools, specialized high schools, but this one would be for healthcare sciences, nursing, doctors, all that kind of stuff, and located in Demopolis.
Yes. Well, you're exactly right. This would be a 4th state public residential high school, and it would be focused on training healthcare workers. Again, one of the identified needs of our state, as well as most every other state in the country, is a lack of healthcare workers. We don't have enough trained healthcare workers in all areas, from your lowest level of healthcare worker all the way up to the highest. And so this school will be focused on training healthcare workers for all of those areas. And yes, the proposed area of location is Demopolis, and as you know, the Governor Ivey is a big proponent of this and has talked about this in her last 2 State of the State addresses. So we got it off the House floor yesterday and have sent it on to the Senate.
Right. Well, I remember last year, there was a big idea and sent over here from the governor, but it wasn't a part of the budget, right? They kind of took it out of the budget.
That's right.
And this year it seems to, I think it's in there, right?
It's in the budget. There's a line item in the budget to fund the initial phase of this building of the school. Yes, and last year what we did was hit the pause button, if you will, and required the community who has really gotten organized, the Demopolis community and the foundation that's been organized to help promote the school, and the state, we did a feasibility study to see, have a third party look at the concept and the proposed place and the curriculum and all that, to see if it was feasible to do this and made good sense. And the result was very positive, and Demopolis was the favored location in the feasibility study.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because the bit of pushback I have heard about this is the location, because it is relatively remote, rural. and there are some positives to that. But why Demopolis, and why not a larger place like Tuscaloosa or Montgomery? Why Demopolis?
Well, I do think a big part of the governor's emphasis here is on rural health care. We have, such an underrepresentation of healthcare workers in our rural parts of our state, and so while Demopolis is a nice town and not the most rural of places that we have in Alabama, but it is sort of a beacon, if you will, in the Black Belt of how things can operate really well. And for example, the Whitfield Hospital in Demopolis has been through difficult times over the years, but it eventually partnered with UAB and is now a thriving hospital and in that West Alabama area, and is able to treat people in the surrounding areas in ways that even in Tuscaloosa we can't reach, and certainly even further away at UAB or other Birmingham hospitals, it's just harder to reach people in those communities the further away you are. So
yeah, I had Doug Brewer, the CEO of that hospital, on the show not long ago, and he was talking about it also having a teaching laboratory in a rural setting actually helps train students in ways they might not be able to get in a Birmingham or a bigger city. So that also makes sense. Yes. All right, moving down your list of bills. You are carrying this bill in the House. It's actually Senator
Stewart.
Yes, Senator Stewart's in the Senate, but you're carrying it in the House. It has to do with child labor and maybe stiffening penalties on child labor. Talk about what this bill does and why it's necessary.
Well, this is Senator Stewart's bill that I'm carrying for him in the House, and what it does is, as you said, stiffens penalties to employers who are employing underage children in areas of dangerous employment. Okay. So these are very specific areas that are already set forth in our code, but because of some very terrible accidents that have happened in Alabama, I think the sentiment from the Department of Labor, who has been working with Senator Stewart, was that we could use stiffer penalties and fines to discourage people from employing children in these dangerous capacities.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised to even hear that, and maybe I haven't seen those reports or whatever, but you just think about that being a long gone era of dangerous working conditions for children, but apparently it's needed.
Apparently so. So that's what this does. It's pretty specific to these particular types of jobs in terms of increasing the penalties and fines. But yeah, so yes, apparently it is needed. It's unfortunate.
Last bill I want to ask you about is the crime victims compensation. I know this has to do with victims of human trafficking. It's been a real watchword the last couple of years, human trafficking. I think the governor signed that human trafficking bill into law today. So talk about what this crime victims compensation fund would do.
Well, first of all, the very first bill I was able to carry when I came here 3 sessions ago now was from the Alabama Crime Victims Compensation Commission. I didn't even know who they were or what they did, but they came to me and asked me to carry a bill for them then, and I've continued to work with them since. And their job is to run the program for victims of crimes in our state and that file requests to be reimbursed for expenses or whatever type of loss that they've had. And we pay for this through court costs and fines through our legal system. And they have a list of things that they can compensate for, but oddly enough, victims of human trafficking were not on their list, and they are requesting that they be added under the category of domestic abused victims. So that's what we will be asking to do. Tomorrow, this will be on the House floor.
Yeah, you've been busy this session, and we'll watch the House floor, and here comes Representative Almond again with another bill. So, but that's good. And again, these are way different policy areas and everything. So a wide range. So I know you're busy. Got a big day tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming on the show and explaining some of these issues to us. And we'll be following these bills as they go through the process.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
E.O. Wilson, known as the father of biodiversity, is a naturalist, environmentalist, ecologist, entomologist, and humanist. Born in Birmingham, Wilson moved around in childhood and grew up largely in Mobile, where he explored the nearby wilderness, including the Mobile-Tensaw Delta. At age 16, while attending Decatur High School in Decatur, he decided to study insects, specifically ants. He would become one of the world's foremost authorities on ants and earn him the nickname Dr. Ant. In 1978, Wilson won the Pulitzer Prize for General Nonfiction for the controversial book On Human Nature. In 1990, Wilson returned to his earlier research area and published The Ants, an encyclopedic genetic study of the social behavior of ants. This work won him a second Pulitzer Prize. 4 years later, Wilson published perhaps his most engaging work, his memoir, Naturalist. E.O. Wilson has been hailed by numerous organizations and professional societies. He has received more than 100 international medals and awards.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night with more coverage of the Alabama Legislature here on Capitol Journal. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.